second is that scene where she talks to Will, Joe Mantegna's character, to me is the most evil scene in the show, and is the most difficult to recognize. It's the best example, because nothing's really going on in that scene except she's reassuring him. But when you watch it, you have this really uneasy feeling that something's going on that you can't identify. Now, the backstory, to answer your question, is yes, she has a crush on Will. She's trying to seduce Will, but she's too smart to really seduce Will, so she's using really, really covert tactics. Mary's character, Helen, we have created her to be a religious character, has a spiritual connection. And again, she can't justify what her problem is. She just knows she has the feeling. She recognizes the presence of something evil. Here again, we're not trying to say that people are evil, but much more their behavior and their tactics. So what she's doing in that scene is she's creating a relationship with him which is inappropriate. And the first thing she does is, well, it's not the first thing she does, but the most obvious thing she does, and I heard people kind of laughing, is when she says, "Hey, I don't think you should tell your wife about this." Because she's trying to create a relationship of intimacy with him. And anytime you tell someone, this is not between you and your partner, this is between you and me. And the minute Will agreed to that, he had entered into an intimate relationship with her. It's the beginning of an affair. So we never actually had him have an affair, but you recognize that step of, oh, you're making an agreement with someone that's a little bit unholy, and you've justified it. She has enough to worry about. She doesn't need to hear this. The other thing she does, and this is one of my favorite representations of evil, is when he confesses to her. And in Catholicism, we have the sacrament of confession, and the whole idea behind confession is the idea that people grow spiritually. It's for your good to confess, because you then can own your actions, and then you can, and it's not in terms of punishment, but you can experience spiritual growth then, because you don't have this thing weighing you down. What will never happen in a Catholic confession, but happens a lot of times in sort of psychology and everything, is you're never told in Catholicism that what you did wasn't that bad. That is not the function of it. It's not even judged by really degrees of badness. I mean, it's really like what your absolution is. But the conversation is really about, this is something that's weighing me down that I need to confess to and own and understand why I did this and what's in my nature that's making me do this, so that I cannot have this as part of my experience. So when he confesses to her that he said this horrible thing to his son, it was a horrible thing that he said to his son. Is it the worst thing in the world? No. But he does have to own that he said this thing. Again, he didn't cause the accident to happen because he said it, but it is something that he has to deal with, that he wants to deal with, that he understands this is inhibiting his moving on, his growth, and his relationship with his son. And what she says to him is, I think you can let yourself off the hook about that. The idea that any time we're told that we can let ourselves off the hook, which is not an issue of forgiveness, it's about, I don't think you need to make high demands of yourself. I don't think you need to be the best. I don't think you need to realize your highest potential, is basically what, and interestingly enough, when the presence of evil, it's because the subtext of that is you're just not that important. It just doesn't matter. What we do just doesn't matter. And the whole point of this show, the series, and certainly the show, is to make people aware of the choices that they make, and that every choice you make will have a consequence. There's no such thing in the laws of physics as being able to make choices that don't have consequences. And if we are disconnected from the consequences, we can never realize our highest potential. Carl Jung said, what doesn't rise to consciousness manifests as fate. That's the best example of that. Anything you do not bring into your consciousness will appear as fate to you. If you're Kevin and you won't own that moment where you gave up the keys, then all of your life will look like fate. It looks like things are happening to you. The importance, the theological message of Joan, and a lot of religions obviously, is that, it's not about punishment and reward, it's about truth and ownership of your behavior, because you either believe that it's important to be human or it's not. There's really pretty much no other way to go. And so once you decide that there is an importance to being human, then you are kind of obligated to get to the center of what that is and what our jobs are in doing that. Another evil character, I mean, we had a lot of fun with him, was Price, the guidance counselor. He's based on the idea that, and I read that definition of evil to you, that is a representation of laziness and scapegoating. He's a character who has given up on his dreams. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and whenever someone tries to discourage her or make fun of something she's doing, she has a saying which is, "Hello, broken dreams," because she recognizes that that's someone who gave up on their dreams. They need her to do the same. And that's what that character is doing. And he's in this position of authority where someone comes in, and teenagers, they have dreams. He's in the position of undermining those dreams, very much related to the fact that that's what he's done. If you haven't lived your highest potential, you would be invested in no one else doing that either. So it's just easier for him to just tell her to give up on herself. And the idea that it's a similar principle of letting yourself off the hook. Any influence in your life saying, you know what, give up on yourself, it's just not that important, is an evil influence. Of course, he's just sort of funny evil. But I did have a lot of people during the course of Joan of Arcadia ask me if he was actually the devil. He wasn't. But, and so the presence of intellectual justification, I guess, to bring it full circle to the idea that we live in the information age, and the danger is that we have so much information, and we have so many semantics, and the problem with information coming to us as fast and as furiously as it does is that it doesn't have any context. Information out of context is really kind of dangerous, and it puts the onus back on people to participate in one of the highest callings of anybody who lives a religious life, and that's the calling of discernment. That everybody is required to discern, and you know, there are a lot of ways to discern. In Catholicism, discernment is actually a charism. A charism is a gift that everybody has charisms, and they're all given to you for the good of the community. So the charism of discernment, which is arguably what Joan has. She has something called a charism of discernment of spirits, and so does her mother, and that's why her mother has visions and stuff like that, is that she has high powers of discernment. In the modern age, we'd call it high powers of intuition. People who are cued in through their senses to you know, the world behind your eyes. And so, but you know, everybody is required to have a degree of discernment. When you hear satanic inversions, to argue with them, to not be fed information, to not think that information is fact. It's just information, and information out of context has a very unwieldy kind of power, and it's something that I think that we have to be aware of and be conscious of all the time. And that's why I think it's really interesting to me. I like to look at trends in the media, and so when I look at something like, well, right before 9/11, it was really interesting that there were a spate of end of times movies, and a lot of end of the world movies, a lot of apocalypse movies. Of course, it was mainly because of the millennium change, but that was what was in people's minds, that there's something coming. There's something apocalyptic coming, and then ironically, something did. And I'm always interested, I don't have the answers, I'm much more interested in asking questions. I used to tell the writers on Joan of Arcadia, we are here to ask questions, we are not here to give answers. And in the show, God was always asking questions. He used the Socratic method. He very seldom tells her something to do. You know, he might say, remember who you are, but mainly he just asks her questions. And so it's sort of the idea that we have to constantly question information as it comes to us, because otherwise it's really dangerous.